Hey guys, Bill the Appraiser here, back with another episode of All About Appraisals. Um, had this thought a couple of days ago and thought, yeah, this is an older inspection I did a while back, but I thought, several things there might be worth talking about. I think generally this kind of falls under the category of how agents see things and how appraisers see things, and what an agent might take into account in establishing value and what an appraiser would take into account when establishing value. Excuse me. Like I said, this is from a while back, but in this particular house, it had several things going on, nothing super crazy really, just things that an appraiser would almost certainly have to take into consideration that an agent might not even think about. Um, Case in point, this property happened to have a shared driveway. Um, Now, as far as value goes, that might not impact value at all whatsoever, but anything that's atypical, an appraiser generally needs to at least acknowledge and probably make a comment about, and maybe not make an adjustment. So the shared driveway, maybe not a big deal, particularly in this case where it was a shared driveway, but basically, the house to the left had the left-hand side of the driveway and the subject property had the right-hand side of the driveway. So it wasn't even kind of your typical shared driveway. But along with that, this property also happened to be located on an avenue, which is typically busier than your average street or road. And so I think as long as anytime that reviewer or an underwriter sees an avenue address right away, they're looking for the appraiser to make some sort of comment about how busy the street is. Along with that, not only was it an avenue, but it was also a 4-lane avenue, meaning 2 lanes in each direction. A little bit atypical in that, as compared to homes in a well-defined subdivision where you would really only have 2 lanes of traffic, one going in each direction, this kind of implies more traffic, maybe less desirable, etc. So again, the lender would expect the appraiser to at least comment, potentially make an adjustment for a busy road as opposed to comparables on a less busy road. So again, just stuff that an appraiser would have to at least address, if not make an adjustment for, whereas an agent may or may not even realize it, may or may not acknowledge it. Let's face it, it's relatively rare to see a negative comment in an MLS listing. I won't say it's all but unheard of, but it's pretty rare. For the most part, agents generally sort of go into everything and try to put a positive spin on it. Um, like with that particular house, they might say, oh, you'll love being so close to everything. Well, and that may be true, but you're only so close to everything because you live on the busy street that's going to take you, a few miles down the road to this grocery store, a few miles down the road to Walmart, or a few miles down the road to whatever. And so, it kind of goes both ways, so to speak. But along with being on a busy road, there were also businesses, as opposed to, potentially maybe some of the comps that the agent might have used in their CMA, their comparative market analysis, where maybe all those were in well-defined subdivisions where you did not have that business aspect. And needless to say, the business itself probably decides whether or not it's really a big deal or not. It's one thing to have a business that, if it's a flower shop, that's, let's face it, really not a big deal, doesn't make a lot of noise, not a whole lot of traffic coming and going. On the other hand, if it's a nightclub of some sort, there could be a lot of traffic, could be a lot of people coming and going, later in the evening, that might be a problem. Or if it was a strip mall, that kind of thing. And that can also play in with things like FHA, where FHA has rules about how close an FHA property can be to a gas station or gas tanks and things like that. So, if there was a subdivision, if there was a, what am I trying to say, convenience store across the street that also sold gas, well, that could be a problem for some properties that, again, the agent would likely not really take into consideration, but the appraiser would have to acknowledge and potentially make an adjustment for. The subject property also happened to be like 2-1, 2 beds, 1 bath, which is kind of atypical, although there are a fair number of 2-1s out there. And I'm sure in the bigger cities, there are 2-1, Chicago, New York, LA kind of thing. And those still sell for $1 bazillion because of what they are and where they are. and there's nothing particularly wrong with that bed bath combination, but a lender is almost always going to be looking for the appraiser to offer up at least one, if not two or more comparable sales that also have that same bed bath combination, so that the appraiser isn't, using all 3-bed 2-bath comps and making a relatively small adjustment, whether consciously or subconsciously, inflating the value. So that's why they want to see something with the same bed bath count as a subject. As far as my subject property goes that I was just talking about, so yeah, they're kind of on a busy street. They have a shared drive. They're across the street from potentially businesses. They're a 2-1. And their other little sort of anomaly was that there had been an addition. Or I shouldn't say an addition, it probably always existed on the home, was kind of a bump out on the back of the house. But because it was really just kind of an entryway, or maybe it was, to store, maybe there was a second refrigerator out there or something, or the hot water heater. And so, but the problem with this particular one was that it was, the ceiling height was right at or just under 7 feet. So, that could potentially play into it as well because of ANSI. And I've talked about ANSI before on this channel. You may have heard of it before. ANSI is measuring standardization. And basically, ANSI says that everything has to be at least 7 feet to get credit for it. If it's not, then it kind of, to a certain extent, potentially up to the appraiser's discretion, because the rule is kind of the majority of the area has to be 7 feet or above. So in this particular case, if the appraiser was looking at it from the standpoint of, well, there is no wall or door separating the bump out area from the kitchen, is where it was. If they're looking at the whole thing, well, yes, the entirety of the kitchen was about 7 feet. So if they're looking at the bump out as being a much smaller offshoot of the kitchen, a little bit under 7 feet, but the whole area, or the majority of the area, is 7 feet or above, that might have been, one way to count it. Another way would have been to kind of say, well, it's really not 7 feet, and to kind of slice that off from the heated square footage and give them credit for that somewhere else. But again, one of those things that chances are the agent might not have taken into account. And so there could be, some sort of difference in value there. By the same token, was an interesting property, had lots of other things going on. Don't want to belabor this, but anyway, just to kind of as a continuation of, how the appraiser sees it, how agents see it, you might want to think about that. And of course, by all means, please put any comments in the description, and add the comments, and hit like and subscribe. And we will see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.